single aspect that has impressed me more about the change of the game is the emergence of the black player in the game.
As a black man, I think we all can't lose perspective of because somebody sacrificed for us to get where we are today. And I think it's very important that we never forget that. And the main thing I want to do is try to make all black people proud in general and make the world proud. You know, because I'm not pro-black, I'm pro-American, a pro-human being. And I would like for the people to realize that, you know, black people were mistreated and in my opinion, somewhat mistreated today in society. So you can't forget where you came from because somebody took some grief for you back down the line.
The legacy of slavery in America's South persisted well into this century. Life was tough, and the horizons offered little hope of change. Many took their dreams of a better life north to the cities. Subjugation took other equally demeaning forms. But there also began to emerge a sense of community and a dynamic renaissance of Afro-American culture that carried over to sports.
The best basketball played at my time after graduation was played by the New York Wrens, an all-black team. They played beautiful basketball. I don't see it played today with the precision and beauty that the New York Wrens played. They had great athletes. Of course, they weren't getting to play with anyone else. It's like some of the players in the old Negro Baseball League. They would have been brilliant stars had they been permitted to play in professional baseball.
Those guys, to me, had a lot of self-drive, a lot of self-motivation. For everywhere you go, people tell you you couldn't do it, and they continue to do it, and they eventually broke through.
Truly, pride did motivate these men. Strength of character and self-respect protected them from the indignities of racism, which they confronted on a daily basis, often having to drive 200 miles to a game because they were refused meals and accommodation. They still thoroughly dominated their opposition, and they did it with their dignity intact.
They're the best-known, most popular team in the history of sports.
Having played before more than 100 million people in more than 100 countries, the Harlem Globetrotters have done more to introduce basketball throughout the world than any other group. Yet their act is pure showmanship, not sport. They call themselves ambassadors of goodwill, but many feel their clowning antics reinforce demeaning racial stereotypes. Despite these contradictions, theirs has been an amazing story of success. Founded in 1927 by Abe Saperstein, the Trotters immediately hit the road to play for pay. The famous clowning routines disguise the fact that they may have been the finest basketball team in the world into the 1950s, when blacks were first allowed into the NBA. They proved this in 1948 when they beat the world champion Minneapolis Lakers in 2 memorable games. Marcus Haynes, perhaps the most influential dribbler in basketball history, took this occasion to show the world how far beyond his peers he really was by staging his routine against serious competition.
Finally tried to steal the ball, but our elusive and cool sport of the court doesn't quibble about that dribble.
In 1950, the Globetrotters began to live up to their name in earnest. Playing up to 8 games a week, they took their brand of basketball to the world, and the world loved it. Everywhere they went, they were welcomed as gifted entertainers, skilled, athletic, and with an exuberant sense of fun that appealed to everyone. The Harlem Globetrotters' time has certainly passed, but the legacy lives on. They brought a sense of style to basketball, improvisation, self-expression, body language as an art form. This tradition, which shapes mainstream basketball today, first took shape on the urban playgrounds of America.
They're out on the parks, they playing, and it becomes about who can make the most beautiful move, but make the shot, which, so many people get caught up on is the guy made a super move, but he didn't finish the play. That's where you got Michael Jordan being Michael Jordan because he makes the great moves, but he makes the shot. Julius Erving because he made the move and he made the shot. But I think that's the thing that, that they brought to it is that, is that creativity that the game was really lacking at that time and that great athlete.
Johnson in at the baseline.
It's like watching music in action, like watching the sound of the music, which leads one note to another. That's what you're watching the bodies do. It's dance. What's wonderful about it is it can be so physical that even the one expressing it doesn't have to articulate it, doesn't have to have words for it, and let the mood and the passion of the moment course through them. Basketball is a game with a rhythm of passions. You have to improvise depending on what your opponent, your defender, is doing when you're in offense. And so it has to be a more free form. And that's what American jazz is. It's a free form kind of music. Basketball's a free form kind of game. And they both had their origins in the black experience.
Though there were those who had hinted at it, the full flowering of black style at the highest level of basketball had to wait for Earl the Pearl Monroe. His improvisational genius flowed from inner rhythms uniquely his own. Earl's game was his music and his alone.
He was my greatest challenge. He's the only guy I ever dreamt about. Like, how could I deny this guy? And I just figured out, how could I stop him? Because Earl didn't know what he was going to do, so there was no way that I could know what he was going to do. But he had the uncanny ability to shake and bake and wheel and deal and gyrate his body into incredible positions to draw a foul and make baskets.
It might have been time. More likely it was the gut-level appeal of his play. But the Pearl was one of the first black role models whose style became a form of personal expression that young white players aspired towards. This was a subtle but significant step in America's rocky path towards better race relations.